They say a crown is only heavy when the soul beneath it still weighs something. But this king, his soul was already gone. In a forgotten corner of a vast empire, a king ruled with eyes of glass and a voice like distant thunder. His throne was carved from the bones of rivals. His wine tasted of conquest. But in the shadows of his golden halls, someone watched, not for glory, not for revenge, for silence. This is the story of a man who did not pierce the heart, but drown the soul. A death not written in blood, but in disappearance. In history has nearly forgotten his name. He avoided mirrors, not out of vanity, but fear. In the great palace of Arundel, where the ceilings touched the sky, and gold dripped from every ledge, the king refused to look at himself. Servants whispered that he once looked into a pool, and saw not his face, but a child screaming beneath water. They said his eyes had never looked the same since. His enemies called him mad. His allies called him cursed. But he ruled with iron fist and fire-fed fear. Until one day, a new servant arrived. Pale, quiet, moving like someone who had never cast a shadow. No one asked his name. And that was his first victory. He never entered through the front. Always from the kitchens or the garden paths, where no guards looked twice. His hands were steady, his voice forgettable. A servant among hundreds, faceless in a palace of glittering masks. But his eyes, they memorized everything. The king's favorite goblet, the cupbearer's rhythm, the poison cabinet, hidden behind the apothecary's smile. He never touched the vials, never needed to. His poison was older than liquid, older than blades. There was silence and time. He began with the dreams. A leaf slipped beneath the king's pillow, known to bend memory. A faint powder blown into the fireplace, enough to cause whispers in the dark. The king began to speak to things no one saw, to hear voices behind the mirrors. And the quiet servant smiled. What? In the dark, alone, there was a room. No one else entered. Round, silent, windowless. They called it the Chamber of Echoes. The king spent hours there, alone, sitting in a throne carved from obsidian, walls lined with polished stone, not mirrors, but reflections of something deeper. He claimed he could hear the voices of kings long dead. They warned me, he said to his advisors, of betrayal, but never from whom. The quiet servant cleaned that chamber, dusting stones, polishing shadows, and in one corner, he left something behind. A seed, invisible to the eye, but not the soul. A thing that grows only in the mind. That night, the king screamed, claimed his soul had stepped outside his body, that it had walked the floor, and whispered in a voice he did not recognize, "You do not belong in here." She had not spoken in years, not since the birth of their first child, who vanished before drawing breath. The queen walked the palace halls, like a ghost in silk, eyes distant, lips sealed. The people said she was broken, that the king had shattered something inside her, with grief or fear. But the quiet servant saw differently. He noticed the small things, how she watched him whenever he passed, how she left a single rose on the windowsill each morning, where no garden bloomed. One day, she brushed his hand as he served wine, just for a moment, but enough. That night, a page appeared beneath his door. No signature, just 5 words inked in red. He fears his own death, and beside it, a small pressed petal, from the same rose. Deep within the palace gardens, hidden past thorned hedges and quiet fountains, lay a pool the king never touched. It was said the water reflected truth, not form. That what you saw in it was never your face, but your shadow. The king had ordered it sealed once, but it was reopened quietly. One evening, under the dim light of a waning moon, the quiet servant led the king there. The queen left something, he whispered. The king stared into the water, and saw not himself, but eyes, not 2, but many, layered, staring, watching him from beneath the surface. "Who are they?" he gasped. The servant said nothing, only stepped back. The king did not sleep that night, and in the morning, the pool was dry, but he claimed he still saw it. Every time he blinked, the great banquet was held to celebrate the king's rule. 2 decades of power, 2 decades of silence. The tables stretched through the grand hall, covered in silver goblets, gilded meats, laughter that echoed too loud, too forced. The nobles raised their cups, and toasted the king's health, but his hands trembled. The cup felt too heavy, the wine too dark. Somewhere near the end of the table, the quiet servant watched, not smiling, not eating, only listening. And then the laughter stopped. All at once, the candles flickered, the music ceased. The king stood, eyes wide, as if he'd heard something no one else did. "Who?" he whispered. "Who just spoke my name?" No one had. Not out loud, but inside his ears. A voice repeated it, over and over, like it knew it better than he did. He found it by accident. Or maybe it found him. In a corridor he had walked 1,000 times, the king noticed something strange. A door. Wooden. One he swore had never existed. No servant remembered it. No map showed it. But it was there, waiting. He stood before it for hours, listening. The knob was cold. The hinges rusted shut. Yet behind it, a sound, like a heartbeat. Not fast, not slow, just steady, ancient. The quiet servant passed behind him once, paused, and said softly, "That wasn't meant for kings," then walked away, without looking back. The crown had been passed through 10 generations. Gold, yes, but beneath it, steel, sure. Shaped to dig gently into the scalp. So no ruler ever forgot the weight of rule. The king wore it longer than most, slept beside it, dreamed of it, and then it began to speak. At first a hum, then voices, familiar. His father, his son, himself. They said things he had never confessed, called him by a name only his mother used. One night he threw the crown across the room, but in the morning, it was on his pillow, and when he placed it back on his head, it whispered just 3 words, "We are waiting." She had not written in years. Her hands, once graceful, now trembled with memory, but something had shifted. The roses she once left by the window had withered without touch. One evening, she summoned a page, asked for parchment. Silence. She wrote slowly, each word pressed as if it bled. When finished, she folded the letter and sealed it, not with wax, but with a pressed spiral, drawn in her own dried blood. She gave it to the quiet servant, without a word, and that night, before the moon rose, she disappeared. No trace, no note, except for what was written in that final letter. Words the king would read, again and again. You were never meant to carry it. It began in the library, not with smoke, not with heat, but with forgetting. One by one the pages faded, not torn, not burned, just gone. Words vanished, names slipped between the lines. Even the king's own signature disappeared from royal decrees. "It's the ink," the scribes whispered, but it wasn't. The fire burned, not with flame, but with silence, a fire that devoured memory. The quiet servant watched as a portrait crumbled to blank canvas, and when he blinked, the wall was bare. That night, the king wandered the halls, searching for a name, his own, and could no longer speak it. He hadn't touched it, swore he hadn't, but there it was, the door, the one that should not have existed, open, just slightly, a sliver wide enough to breathe something in. He called the guards. No one answered. He called the servant. No one came. Behind the door, a staircase curled downward, into a black that swallowed torchlight. Still, he stepped forward. The air was warm, but wrong, like breath on the back of the neck, from something that wasn't behind him. He didn't descend. Not yet. He only whispered, to the dark, "What do you want?" The door creaked wider, and from below, something whispered back, "Names carry weight. Kings die, but their names echo through time, on coins, on statues, on stone." But his name was fading. Servants stuttered when they addressed him. Letters arrived without salutation. Even the herald at court, the one who'd shouted his title for 20 years, now paused, as if it had slipped from his mind. One morning the king stood before the great mirror. Etched into its frame was his full royal name, 12 letters. He traced them with his finger, but when he looked again, there were only 11, then 10. That night he woke in a sweat, from a voice in a dream, calling him by a name he had never heard before, but somehow knew it was his. And in the hallway, the quiet servant waited, holding the final letter. It was sealed in black wax. No crest, no name, only a spiral, deeply pressed, still warm. The king opened it slowly, hands shaking. Inside, just a single sheet, ink faded, letters curling away from themselves, as though they were trying to forget what they said. The first line. There was never a king. He read on. Words that cut deeper than blades. Accusations. Of a crown stolen from a brother. Buried alive. Of rituals. Spoken in dead tongues. Beneath red moons. Of names burned from history. With fire that left no ash. The last line bled off the page. As if it had kept writing. Long after the ink ran out. He looked up. The throne room felt smaller. Colder. And the crown on his head. Somehow heavier. The king demanded his presence. Bring me the quiet one, he said. The guards looked confused. Who, your grace? The one who walks like he knows every secret. But no one knew him. No records. No assignment. No name. The head steward claimed. There was no such servant. He brings me my wine. The king barked. He dusted the chamber of echoes. But the dust had returned. The wine was untouched. And every cup in the palace was sealed in silver and guarded. The mirror no longer showed his face. The portrait in the hall was of someone else. The king screamed, and it echoed through the halls. But no one came, because no one remembered who he was. Not even him. He returned to the pool, or what remained of it. Dry, cracked, silent. The moon cast no reflection. The stars blinked out, one by one. In his hands, the crown no longer shimmered. It wept. Gold turned gray. Edges softened to ash. He stepped into the pool, bare feet cold against forgotten stone, and looked down. No eyes stared back. No face. No king. Only a ripple. Deep. Black. Endless. Then the voice returned. Not loud. Just there. Like breath. Are you ready? He closed his eyes and let go. Not of power. Not of memory. But of the illusion that he had ever existed. The pool filled. Silently. Slowly. And the soul, the one he no longer remembered, sank.